I've been on a carnivore diet now known as the Lion Diet for the past 3.5 years. One of my viewers told me that I have to watch this interview because it's mind-blowing. So I thought, well, if it's that good, I'm going to have to watch it with my good friends here on Ferrigno Freedom.
You are a lobbyist and you are a Stanford-educated physician.
9 years into my postgraduate training, and I looked around me and I realized that patients in America are getting much sicker every year, more depressed, we're getting infertile, and life expectancy is going down.
When any American gets sick with a chronic condition, they go on a lifetime medication and they keep racking up more comorbidities, but you don't die, you just suffer.
We're put on the pharma treadmill from the moment we are born in this country. 74% of American adults now are overweight or obese. Close to 50% of children are overweight or obese. A full 50% of American adults have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. 30% of teens now have prediabetes. We have 18% of teens with fatty liver disease, a disease that used to be in late-stage alcoholics. Cancer rates are skyrocketing in the young and the elderly. Young adult cancers are up 79%, and this is the first year in American history we're estimated to have over 2 million cases of cancer. 25% of American women are on an antidepressant medication. 40% of 18-year-olds have a mental health diagnosis. We have the highest infant and maternal mortality rate in the entire developed world. Autism rates in kids are 1 in 36 nationally. This was 1 in 1,500 in the year 2000, and the screening has not changed. And I could go on and on. Autoimmune diseases, infertility is at peak rate.
But so can I just ask a very fundamental question? Why would we follow the guidelines rather than the outcomes?
It's a great question.
So you just said 5 minutes ago, you were outlining this terrifying and sad and catastrophic series of stats describing the total collapse of public health in the United States. That's right. And so who cares what the guidelines are? Doesn't anyone just sort of zoom out for a second and be like, all these kids have diabetes, which leads to dementia. Like this is not working.
Right.
Did no one say that?
Well, the question, it's not working, is the question I would basically put in front of every doctor in America. Like if you're not looking around you and just scratching your head and saying, what the hell is going on?
Yes.
Then you are profiting off of this crisis, and I want the most dangerous thing you can do in America right now, obviously, is ask the question, why? So,
That was what led me to trying the Lion Diet, to trying a carnivore diet to fix my problems, is that I got tired of having doctors look at me like I was the crazy one for having this gut problem that they couldn't find any answers for. Technically, the gut problem that I was not diagnosed with, but that I had, is leaky gut. The reason I wasn't diagnosed with it is they can't prescribe anything for it. So there's no diagnosis for it. Leaky gut has to do with the effect of lectins on the gut lining that allows your gut to be permeable and allow things into your system, into your body, in a route that they're not meant to go in, that cause you to have toxicity in your body, to cause you to have inflammation and pain. And I was having a tremendous amount of it. But because there was no medicine to prescribe for it, the doctors weren't dealing with it at all. So it caused me to say, I need to try something different. And when I heard Jordan Peterson talking about what the Lion Diet had done for him and his daughter and the number of issues that they were having cured by it, I thought, what have I got to lose? Nobody else is giving me any answers. I'm going to give this a shot. And I remember when I started on my very first video, 125 days on Lion Diet, I thought, I'm going to do this for 6 weeks. And that's exactly what I said on day one when you watch the video. Well, it has now been 3 years and 8 months. And I'm still doing the same thing because it makes me feel better than I ever have. And I just want to scream it from the rooftops because I see so many people who need to know this. And I'm thankful for people like Casey and Calley that are getting this message out there. And I hope that when you see the original video, which I've put a link for in the description of all of these videos that I'm going to make from this one video, share that video with your friends and maybe buy some of the products that they advertise on the show. Because when you buy the products that they put into their own show, then you're actually supporting what Tucker is trying to do here. You're supporting the efforts that he makes. He's got people on staff that he's got to pay to do this stuff. And even in my situation, even though I don't have a staff of people, I need a reason to spend as much time as I do doing this so that I can share information with people who want to hear it from somebody who's just like them, who's at the same level that they are, struggling to get by in this world and telling you exactly what my story is that matches what people like Casey and Calley and Tucker are talking about here. Well, anyway, let's continue on and see more about this section, why the medical industry is ignoring this. It's mostly because we're not putting pressure on people and nobody's willing to speak up, but that's my opinion. Let's go. You tell me what your opinion is in the comments and we'll press on.
About anything.
About anything. But, you know, this just a point to kind of answer your question about why is this happening? Why aren't we following outcomes? It's institutionalized to not actually focus on outcomes because the business model of the healthcare system is volume. It's how many patients can you see, not what their outcomes are. We are paid for volume, not outcomes. Now,
did you see that as a surgeon?
I'm going, yeah. So absolutely. I mean, it's how many chart notes can you write and bill every day? That's why doctors are seeing 30 to 40 patients a day with 15 different diagnoses for each one. Obviously, you can't help that patient thrive and get healthier. All you can do is write the prescription because we are paid for volume. And the unofficial mantra of
all doctors must know that.
All doctors know. The unofficial mantra of private practice medicine is you eat what you kill, which means you get paid, you eat for how much volume you can do, how many surgeries you can sell, how many people you can get through in and out of your office. Now, back in...
Before we go too much farther, just that notion that that's what doctors know, and that obviously she was hearing that and it was conflicting with her conscience and leading her to look at what she's doing and not being able to help people, that something's wrong here. It's so admirable of her to have taken this stand that she's taking. I'm thankful for it. But at the same time, I have this desire not to attack people when I don't know for sure what the situation is. But I have dealt with enough people in the healthcare industry that seem to have this shark mindset, you eat what you kill, that it tells me that there are a lot more of them out there that know exactly what they're doing and they don't care. And I've run into some of those doctors myself. And if you have, I would love to hear your comments because people just need to know what they're dealing with. Because a lot of people are out there thinking, is it just me that feels like my doctor doesn't care? Is it just me that it feels like I'm spending all this time and money trying to get healthcare and I'm not getting any healthier? Share your information, not only in the comments below, but be sure to go to my website, ferrignofreedom.com, and sign up to be in a carnivore conversation with me if you've discovered what's changed your health, if you've been on a carnivore way of eating, and it's helped you fix a lot of these problems so that more and more people will hear your stories, regular people's stories, where this type of eating has changed their life because they've got the seed oils, they've got the sugar, and they've got the processed food out of their life. They're not eating the highly sugary vegetables and fruits that they used to eat because they realize that these things are being manipulated and they're frankenfood now compared to what they once were. It's just not the natural food that we're used to eating. The meat industry is being tainted by this as well, but so far, and one of the reasons I only eat ruminants is because those animals are so well designed to eliminate all the toxins that are in the food that they eat that it really helps. Also, I try to buy regenerative as much as I can so that I can get food that hasn't been tainted by pesticides and weed killers and things like that so that the animals that I'm eating are as healthy as they can possibly be. And I know everybody can't afford that. I can barely afford to do that. But it's something that we need to be able to do to support farmers who are doing the right thing and to support doctors like this who are doing and saying the right thing. Hey, it's Dante Ferrigno. I just wanted to thank you first of all for watching this video, but I also wanted to tell you about my merch shop. I have a link in the description for a bunch of different items I've put together for you to be able to show your support for the carnivore lifestyle, and every purchase helps me to keep doing what I'm doing here on Ferrigno Freedom.
When Obamacare was coming about, they were, which was really an utter failure, there was lip service that was paid to this idea of value-based care, okay, which sounds great on paper, right? So value is good outcomes over lower cost. This sounds great. We'll get paid more as doctors if we have better outcomes over lower cost. What is the highest value intervention you can do for a patient? Get them to eat healthy. Doesn't cost a lot, has incredible outcomes universally, right? Get them to sleep, get them to exercise. We would have moved towards that. But even that was corrupted by corporate interests because how the doctor had to report on quality was through these metrics called MIPS, basically, merit-based incentive little criteria. And they were most of them were based on how many of their patients were medicated. So instead of a doctor having to report quality as, I have a patient who got better, who got healthier,
which we expect,
it was how much of the patient population was on long-term medication. So the actual good outcome was defined by medication adherence in a practice, rather than is the patient reversed of their disease. Every disease I talked...
So it wasn't the actual outcome.
It wasn't the outcome. The outcome ended up being how many of the patients took meds. So even with lip service to good outcomes, it's not a healthier cell, it's a medicated patient. Those are two different things. We did not learn that in medical school.
But can I ask you, I mean, again, I don't want to get too personal, but like, what about the doctors that you were trained with or served under who trained you? I'm sure a lot of them are good people. I know
They're
all of
great
them
people.
are smart. Yes. Like the things that you're describing would be pretty easy for anyone with an IQ over 80 to notice.
Right.
Like, they not notice this? Like, what is that?
There's several aspects to it. I think that because med school is funded by pharma, when I was at Stanford Medical School, we got a $3 million grant from Pfizer to revise our curriculum and you can look up the articles from this time. It was around 2011. The grant was with no strings attached. They had no control over what the curriculum development was going to be. But, if you're accepting $3 million from Pfizer, of course it's going to have an influence on what we're learning.
And the dean received consulting payments as well.
Actually?
Yeah. The dean during her time, Philip Pizzo, was a pain specialist. Pfizer was one of the largest opioid makers, and he received direct consulting payments from opioid makers. And that year that they received that Pfizer grant, he was appointed, which I was actually involved with. I was working for pharma at the time, to an NIH panel to make opioid guidance with the burgeoning crisis. He selected that panel. How can you have a more prestigious person than the dean of Stanford Med School? 9 out of the 19 people he selected were directly paid for with consulting payments from opioid companies. And that panel in 2011, 2012 recommended more relaxed opioid standards and said that the idea of addictiveness was overblown and led to an increase of the curve in opioid deaths. And, we're talking a lot about the opioid crisis right now. J.D. Vance talking about it, what's just, destroying Appalachia and large parts of America. What people don't, I think, realize is that the majority of opioid overdose deaths started with a legal prescription.
Yes, that's right.
So that's how it works. So I was actually helping.
It's sort of hard to hear that and not, again, one doesn't want to be judgmental. However, that seems like criminal behavior to me.
For the doctors, all the education is just targeted towards having you just have one hammer, right? You have one hammer, which is your prescription pad and your surgery. You don't have any other tools in your toolbox, right? Because from the very beginning, from the very way that we're even taught about the body, it has been corrupted, right? It's rotten. It's rotten the way that it's wrong biologically how we're thinking about the body. But you even look at the med school curriculum.
Can you tell us really quick how?
Well, in the sense that we don't learn they're not... 80% of medical schools don't have a single class on nutrition, and yet food is the cause of 9 out of 10 leading causes of death in the United States.
So you were saying, but even to zoom out a little farther, you were saying at breakfast, you put it so well, of course I can't remember it exactly. You were saying that medical education disconnects the body into its components, but doesn't address it as a connected thing.
So this is the point that's going to potentially create insolvency in our economy and ruin us as a species, is this exact point. It's
not that the stakes are high.
Is that we have convinced people and doctors that the body is 100 separate parts. The body is one system, one unified system, obviously. Something happening in your toe can affect everywhere else in the body. And yet we have essentially brainwashed people and doctors to believe that specialization is king, right? What is the most prestigious doctor, right? It's someone who is hyper subspecialized.
Yes.
We basically diminish the value of primary care and pediatrics, these general specialties, yet someone who's a neuro-otologist is like at the peak of the
What is
ladder.
that?
It's literally someone who did my residency, so 5 years of head and neck surgery residency, and then two additional years just focusing on 2 square inches of the ear to focus on the ear, basically, and do surgery of the ear. That is the dean of Stanford. Right now, the dean of Stanford Medical School is a neuro-otologist. So the more specialized you get, the more prestigious you get. And what this does is it creates a system in which we actually start to see the body as 100 different separate parts, and we lose sight of how all of these things are connected. We lose sight of the research that's telling us how all these diseases are connected.
I would see that all the time when I was the administrator at a retirement home, and I'd see my residents go and see their doctors, and they would be traded around from specialist to specialist, and nothing was actually being done to solve their problems, but they were sure getting a lot of Medicare bills out there because they had to see so many doctors for all of their varying problems that not one of them is individually solving, but they're prescribing medicine for it, and their medicine list would just get longer and longer, and I would think, what in the world is going on? And it was one of the reasons I couldn't keep participating in the system. I mean, my job was to make sure that they took their medicines on time and that it was reported accurately. And then I would go to those doctors and I would ask them, do you want to see the history on how they're taking their medicine? They didn't care. As long as they were still prescribing it, they didn't care. And that worried me because I thought, isn't it a good thing that we're making sure that they get the medicines that they supposedly need to get better or to feel better or to fix this problem? They didn't care. They didn't care. They just cared as long as they could keep billing Medicare for those medicines or the insurance company for those medicines. Most of anything, if I need something from the doctor, I'm paying cash these days. And it used to be a time when paying cash got you a bit of a discount. Now you pay more for cash because they know that that's most likely going to go to collections and they're probably never going to get anything from it. So they just make it as high as they can. Insurance actually gets a discount. Everything is upside down when it comes to our medical system right now. And I've been saying it since the 1990s when they were pushing healthcare through the Clintons. And I'm not saying that the Bushes were any better, but I'm telling you right now that every time that they talked about healthcare needing to be covered by the government or taken care of by the government, this is the kind of thing that I was warning about that I still get pushback on today, that people seem to think that government is going to have a solution for our medical problems. Government, when they get involved, is almost always the problem that causes more problems.
Getting back to nature. Something Katie and I like to do when we get a chance is to go out camping or just to go out into the wild. And we also like to prepare for the worst. And the ITAL portable water filtration system allows us to be able to do both. With its double activated carbon and reverse osmosis membranes, it can remove bacteria, viruses, parasites, heavy metals, pesticides, polyvinyl chloride, PFAs, and more. It has dual hoses, one for wash water and one for drinking water. Separate your hoses into 2 separate bottles, and you've got a way to have your wash water and your drinking water ready to go at all times. Thanks to its built-in 6,000 milliamp hour backup batteries that are rechargeable, it takes 3 hours to fully charge it, and it can purify a maximum of 9 gallons of water at a time. This is equivalent to meeting the water needs of 13 adults when they live in the outdoors for one day. Pair this device with ITAL's 100-watt portable solar panel and a few extra filters, and you could stay in the wild almost indefinitely.
Tastes good. This is good to have as an emergency backup or just to have on camping trips. I love this thing. I think this thing is awesome.
And if you use my link in the description with my coupon code, you'll save $40 off this must-have device. I love it, Katie loves it, and I know you'll love it too.
The diabetes that's happening all over your body. Actually, we know that type 2 diabetes greatly increases our risk for hearing loss. But a neurologist doesn't really want to think about that. They want to operate on the ear, right? And so you lose sight of the connections, and you get a patient in 15 different specialist offices. So many Americans are going through this right now, where you go to the primary care doctor with 10 issues and you end up with 10 different referrals to different specialists. Yep. And no one has any education, time, or financial incentive to think about how all those diseases are related. So what you do is you have specialists reacting to the symptoms happening in different parts of the body rather than anyone understanding how to think about how it's all connected, which when you go down that road, when you start asking why, you realize it is extremely, extremely simple, that all aspects of modern American society are rigged against the American patient to get us, addicted to food, allegiant to pharma, and just spending 10 hours a day on our phones, addicted. And now we are all sick. Our bodies are breaking, and it's leading to all these organ-specific symptoms that are related to a very simple root cause.
Can I just press you just a tiny bit?
Sure.
I hate this.
I know.
Why did you come to that conclusion and none of your colleagues did? I think it's really important
Yeah.
to understand why certain people see obvious truths while everyone else is, including smart people, are blinded to them.
Let me say what I think it is. It's very easy to keep your mouth shut as long as it keeps the gravy train rolling. I've seen it even with good teachers who would push back a little bit against what they saw coming into the school system, where it was allowing kids to see things that they shouldn't see on a small scale. And then when they would go to the school board and say, hey, this is not something we should be doing because this is more of a role for the parents. Should we be doing this? And they would get so much blowback from that. They would think, well, I went to school to study to teach, and I'm not getting paid very much. I can't afford to lose my job. And it's very easy to say, okay, all right, I'll go along to get along. And that is the norm. Go along to get along. And if you're guilty of it, all I can say is it's not too late to wake up and start saying no to the things that they're telling you to go along to get along with. Because we're being pushed to the edge. If we're not already at the edge or over the edge with all of this stuff, you've got to take a stand for what you know is right. And you've got to speak your mind when you know something is wrong. Because if we don't, we're going to be responsible for what happens to our children and our grandchildren. And it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because I've already seen what it's done to my older children. I've already seen what it's had an effect on with many of the children that my current boys who go to high school. I look at the children that are in there, and so many of them are struggling with weight issues and health issues that we just didn't have when I was growing up. And it breaks my heart. We've got to do something. We've got to take a stand for what's right and speak the truth. Whether it's to power at our workplace or to power in our voting or in our local communities, we've got to take a stand, people. We've got to take a stand for the things that are right. Because if we don't, you see where we are. You see where we are. A lot of people don't see where we are because they're addicted to the mainstream. They're only watching the channels that are lying to them because it makes them feel better that they're believing something that goes along with the plan. They're comfortable being herded into the slaughter. It just drives me crazy because people I love are following along with this type of mentality. And I don't want to see them destroyed by it. I don't want to see their children destroyed by it. But that's what's happening. We've got to take a stand.
Allowed you to connect these pretty obvious dots?
Parenting.
How? What did your parents do?
My parents. Our parents focused on incentives. Incentives are everything. Incentives are why Americans are sick right now. If we change the incentives, we'd get healthy in 2 years. Our country would be the most competitive country in the world. My parents' incentive in our family was to ask questions, not to have any stars or marks or anything, you know. So what was celebrated in our family was sitting down at the dinner table in DC and asking questions and poking at ideas. We were celebrated for thinking about things in a bigger picture. That is not, you talked about this with Tim Dillon on your recent podcast, the boomers, you know, they just want the stars for their kids, you know, to get all these little badges. But that was not what was celebrated. My parents didn't
We
care.
developed our own compulsion to climb up the ladder, but it was always instilled like, ask
add
questions,
value,
and
questions,
we never
think
felt
for yourself.
Actually like our parents were that happy with rising up. And it was like, are we being good people? Ask, and that was really instilled in us.
Did they have a moral, explicit moral center? Like this is right.
I
This
think
is wrong?
they were very spiritual people.
Yeah.
You know, we were raised with spirituality. We were reading, you know, sacred texts and the Bible and Rumi and Ayn Rand and all these different things from a young age, discussing it at the dinner table, thinking about philosophy. And so that was what was celebrated.
So they were not conformists.
When I quit my surgical residency in my 5th and final year, after hundreds of thousands of dollars into my education, my parents threw me a party. They were
No way.
They came.
No parent would do that.
No parent. They were, and they never told me to quit.
Hundreds
but
of thousands of debt.
Absolutely. They were so proud of me for coming to my own conclusions and seeing it. And there's a lot of...
Even though, so the incentive for parents, at least in DC where I raised my children, is to tell people in your neighborhood, your friends, that you have a daughter who's a Stanford educated
They never pushed
doctor.
us to go to Stanford. They never pushed us to even... I never once, ever in our entire childhood, they said, you need to go to your college counseling meeting, ever. ever. They were about having fun and thinking. We were, they were older parents too. My parents were in their 40s when they had us. They'd lived lives. They were not living through us. They were spiritually grounded. They're not afraid of death. They aren't driven by the materialism that just makes you rack up a wall full of, awards. It was about,
you're making me emotional.
Yeah.
Sound like wonderful
That is
people.
the reason. That is the reason. And I mean, there's privilege involved in it too, of course. Like we had financial backstop. A lot of my friends going into medicine, they were supporting their families, right? And I have so much respect for that. And the fact that people's options are limited, but doctors are in a trap. It's $500,000 of education. You have this guaranteed salary and all you have to do is drink the Kool-Aid. All you have to do is stay heads down and not ask questions, not ask why. And you can really feel good about your work, right? People are sick as hell in this country, and we do need people to be doing heart surgery or else people will die. But the thing that is so imperative for people to understand is that the reasons we're having surgery, the reasons why we're getting sick, the reasons why American competitiveness is plummeting, the reasons why our kids are chronically ill, half of the kids in America are chronically ill, are all from preventable issues. So if you're a doctor who's not spending any time on focusing on that, then unfortunately, for better or worse, you are bankrolling on the problem.
Do you remember when Elon...
I honestly think you're going to change the world.
And by extension, you're part of the problem. That's the key. When you're not taking a stand for what you know is right, just because it profits you a little bit, you're actually going to wind up paying a lot more in the long run for your choice to be silent when you know you should speak.
I mean that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just had to say that.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here.
Oh, no, sorry. It's just your description of your parents is,
It brings me to tears.
Oh my gosh.
I cannot wait to have children. There is no greater role. There is no greater role in this world. And, I was sold such a bill of lies, like climb the medical ladder, become the chair of an institution. I can think of no greater thing that we can do than have children and keep them healthy.
Yes.
Right. And I just, up until a couple years ago, I didn't even want to have children because I thought it was a liability to this value system of just like rise the ranks, make money. But I don't think there's anything more important we could be doing than creating healthy children who are thinking for themselves, who are eating healthy food. And I cannot wait for that role. And I think it's a spiritual corruption of our society right now that we have forgotten that this is the most important thing that we can do. It's unbelievable how far off we are. And I think it is deeply a spiritual crisis because we have lost sight of what really matters in our lives.
And you were singing my song, and much better than I ever could. So that is, sorry. So completely carried away. So I guess now is the time, since we're talking about your parents, tell us, and your brother and I have talked about this at some length, I know this is painful, but about your mother, her illness, how that affected what you're doing now.
Our mother was our best friend. This book is dedicated to her. And, I think my mom, she's sort of the archetypal American patient, and she's someone who was totally faithful to the American healthcare system. And like so many other Americans, was ultimately completely let down by it. She passed away far too early after 40 years of completely missed warning signs of the root causes of all the different symptoms and conditions she was racking up. So, she had me when she was 40. I was a humongous baby born at Sibley Hospital. I was almost 12 pounds. Calley was almost 12 pounds. And that's a huge baby. And, there's actually a term for a baby over 8.5 pounds, which is Feto Macrosomia, which portends metabolic issues in a mother and metabolic issues in the baby. And I had them. I was 210 pounds by the time I was in 8th grade, and my mom.
I can relate to that. I think I was close to 10 pounds when I was born, and I always struggled with my weight. So that was definitely something we were already seeing even when I was born in 1972.
Had trouble losing the baby weight, had a very tough menopause, in her 60s, got all the American diagnoses, high cholesterol, they gave her a statin, high blood pressure, they gave her an ACE inhibitor, high blood sugar, they gave her metformin. Oh, this is normal. It's a rite of passage. Every American's getting these diseases. So she went to all the specialists, she went to the cardiologist and the endocrinologist and her primary care doctor, got all these medications. And then, she's 72 years old, doing everything the doctors are telling her to do, taking the pills every single day. And she gets a diagnosis of, she has some belly pain one day, went to the doctor. It lasted for a few weeks. She got a CT scan, stage 4 widely metastatic pancreatic cancer. She was dead 13 days later. And she was seen at the best hospitals in the country. You know, she was getting executive physicals at Mayo. She was being seen at Stanford and Palo Alto Medical Foundation. And they looked at us in the eye. They looked at us after her death and said, "Oh my God, this is so unlucky." And I knew enough at that time to know there was nothing unlucky about this. This was an entirely predictable sequence of events from the age of 40 to the age of 72.
And she had, as you've suggested,
I can feel my blood pressure going up as I hear this, because I saw what happened to my father when he got diabetes in his 50s, or yes, it was in his 50s, and he had type 2 diabetes. And then in his 60s, he had a stroke, and then he started having more complications with the limbs, and he had a sore on his toe that stretched into him having his foot cut off, which led to him having his leg cut off, which led ultimately to his death. I watched what happened with my stepfather involving getting certain shots that he shouldn't have got that clearly had something to do with his early demise. Even though he was in his 80s, he was extremely healthy man that always worked hard and ate decent food. I mean, he ate regular meals. He didn't do a whole lot of processed food in his life. At 83, he was working harder than most people half his age. Two people half his age weren't working as hard as he was, and yet he has a brain aneurysm out of the blue somewhere because he's following the doctor's advice on some things. It's the kind of stuff that just makes me angry on the inside. And I have to try to keep my anger from becoming sin in my own heart so that I'm able to share this information with people. I'm risking my channel to share this information because I want to amplify this message as much as I can. And I want you to be able to share this information with your friends. I know a lot of people are not going to watch a 2-hour and 20-minute video. So I'm hoping that by releasing this in small segments that I'm able to sway people on what I think about it, because a lot of people aren't going to think much of Tucker Carlson for whatever reason. Maybe his background, maybe the fact that he was with Fox News, or that you were just raised to think that he was crazy. But I'm telling you, from somebody who comes from a background of having to scratch to have everything I have, this is the truth that you need to know, and this is the truth that you need to share. Hey, Sam. Sam, you okay? Don't cry. He's over here having nightmares hearing me talk about this stuff and be so adamant about it. All right, let's keep going.
I think every possible advantage, like clearly high-functioning person who followed the guidance, had the means to do it, had a daughter with specialty knowledge, a physician daughter. So like she had every possible advantage.
Did every single thing they said and died at 72 in the prime of her life from conditions that were on the exact same spectrum.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?